One time I had to babysit one of my neighbor's kids overnight. We're gonna call the kid Benny. The parents didn't really tell me anything when they left me alone with Benny, but they left me a note and they were like, you can only open it in emergencies. So at this point, I'm alone with Benny. It's like 11 p.m. and I told Benny, I was like, dude, you should like get to bed, it's late. Then Benny starts getting really red and he's like, no, we don't wanna sleep alone, sleep with us, please. I didn't know why Benny said us, but I was like, whatever, okay, like, yeah, I'll sleep in your room, like, it's fine. So fast forward a couple hours, it's like 3 a.m. at this point. This is the best part.
Benny starts talking in his sleep and he's like, take her instead. You're not my friend anymore. I am not yours.
And I try waking him up and I look at him and his eyes are wide open as he says this stuff. I was freaking out, so I went to go open the note that his parents said was only for emergency. So after Benny was literally acting possessed while I was sleeping in his room, I went to go open the note that his parents left that was only for emergencies.
And guess what it said?
The note literally said, sorry for not telling you, run him a cold bath, and call 911 if anything happens.
I didn't know what to do, so I just went to go wake up Benny.
So when I woke Benny up, he was really, really mad, and he kept trying to put his hands in front of my eyes and was telling me, please be nice to them, open up. And so long story short, I ran Benny a cold bath and then he locked himself in the bathroom. So at this point, Benny has literally locked himself in the bathroom and he's literally yelling out loud, please take her, not me, I won't tell anyone.
This is the best part.
So I called the police because I was scared for my life at this point. And the note that his parents left said to do that. So the cops tried calling Benny's parents, but they couldn't get a hold of them, but they got a hold of the grandparents. And eventually his grandparents came. So his grandparents come and they're like, we're gonna take him to a priest. And they told me to leave.
Part 1 of how I stole my boyfriend's side chick. My boyfriend Zach and I decided to check out a new restaurant in town for date night. We got in his car and started to head out. He usually has better cell coverage than me, so we were using the navigation on his phone to get to the new spot. I noticed his buddy from work, Matt, was texting him as usual. However, this time I noticed the heart emojis out of the corner of my eye at the top of the screen from Matt, which I thought was weird. I started to think about it, and Matt would always text pretty late at night, and my boyfriend always seemed really happy when texting him. I played it off like I was going to look for a faster route, picked up his phone, and quickly copied down the number. When we got to the restaurant, I started paying attention and noticed Zach texting throughout our date. The next day, I called the number and a girl named Jessica answered. He saved her number under Matt and told me he was a buddy from work for months. We started talking and she told me that she had no idea that he had a girlfriend. She also told me that they met on Tinder and they've been talking for a while. She was really honest and cool about it, and she was just as mad as I was. We decided to meet up and talk some more about what we were going to do to get back at him. This is when things got interesting. Part 2 of how I stole my boyfriend's side chick. Jessica and I decided to meet up downtown and come up with a plan on how we were going to confront Zach about playing us both. We were planning on doing it together to make him as uncomfortable as possible. I was surprised when I first saw her because she was drop dead gorgeous, which made me a little nervous at first. We met up at a brunch spot and began talking over mimosas. She was furious with Zach for wasting her time and lying to her, as was I. Everything she was saying was exactly how I felt. A few more mimosas in and she said, we don't need him, we're way too cute for him anyways, especially you. That's when she grabbed my hand to comfort me. When she grabbed my hand, I got nervous and jokingly made a comment about how I'm done with men. Surprisingly, she agreed and said we should start dating women instead with a smile. We went shopping after brunch and ended up back at her place a few hours later drinking wine. A few glasses in, we began trying on and modeling some of the new clothes we bought. One thing led to another and we hooked up. We really hit it off and we stayed up all night talking and laughing. I went to her place again the next night and the night after that. We both ended up completely ghosting Zach and dating each other instead. It's been over a year now and we couldn't be any happier. So thanks, Zach.
Story time of how I found out that my mom was actually my older sister. My older sister never really liked me as a child. We were never close. I never knew why, but I was guessing it was because of the 10-year age gap. But I'm pretty sure she hated me because she couldn't even look me in the eye. I cannot make this up. She would not look me in the eye. But she never really talked to my parents either. She kind of just kept to herself all the time. Sometimes I have vivid memories of when we were younger and she would always be arguing with my parents about something, and I always thought it had something to do with me. Well, I was right. It had everything to do with me because eventually my sister turned 18 and she moved out. For 2 years, I didn't talk to her at all. I honestly don't even think I had her number saved, and I'm pretty sure that she didn't have mine. Well, 2 years later, and I was 10 at the time, she reached out to me via social media. I'm not sure how she found my Instagram name, but it was just my name, so she probably just typed that in and found me. She DM'd me and told me that she wanted to talk about something very important and that she would like to talk over the phone. So we exchanged numbers and we called that same night. And she told me that when she was younger, my dad had taken advantage of her and gotten her pregnant and had me.
Girls, tell me about a time where your quick thinking probably saved your life. I'll go first. 2 years ago, I was walking my dog at the park and a man approached me and asked to take a picture of her. And I said yes, because why not? It's a picture of a dog. So he starts taking a picture of my dog, and then I realized that he was like holding up her collar, and then it hit me. My address is on that collar. He's not taking a picture of my dog, he's taking a picture of my address. So I told him that I actually didn't feel comfortable with him having a picture of my dog, and I asked him to delete it. So he deletes it and then like starts walking away really fast. And I was like, "Excuse me, sir, no, could you also go into your deleted album and delete it from there?" And he goes, "I don't have a deleted album." And I was like, "You have an iPhone, everybody has a deleted album, could you please delete the picture?" And he was like, "Sorry, I don't have a deleted album," and like keeps walking away. And keep in mind, this is like 2 PM in a park, like there's other people around. So now I'm like chasing after him and I'm telling him, "Sir, I know you have the album, I will show you where the album is, can you please go onto your phone so that we can delete the picture?" Oh, part two, I'm sorry for the delay. So I'm still chasing after him, and people at the park are like starting to look at us now because I'm chasing after him and I'm telling him to stop walking. And so he stops, and I tell him again to delete the photo from the deleted album, and he goes, "I don't have a deleted album." And I was like, "Yes, you do. Everybody does. It'll take 10 seconds. And he goes, "Fine." And he like goes in his phone, does something for a second. He goes, "There, it's gone." And I was like, "Could I see the deleted album just to make sure it's gone?" And he goes, "No, you can't look at my phone." And I was like, "I don't want to look at your phone. I just want to see the album just to make sure the picture is gone. That's it." And he goes, "No, you're not going to look at my phone." And I was like, "Sir, I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to leave until you show me the album. So please just show me the album so we can be done with this." So he shows me the album. The picture was still there. So I made him delete it in front of my eyes. What if I hadn't noticed that he took a picture of my address? And what if I went home that day and, you know, that night when I took my dog out to pee, he was outside waiting for me? I mean...
Hey, I can't be the only one. Who else knows people that have killed other people?
Finally, something that I can actually relate to. So my grandma killed her mom, so she killed my great-grandma. It's kind of a crazy story, but back in the 90s, my grandma was over at her house giving her a bath. She was elderly, so my grandma was kind of in charge of taking care of her. During the bath, my grandma brought up the past about how she was abused as a child by one of her stepdads, and her mom then basically admitted to knowing about the abuse, but blamed her for it instead of the stepdad, which sent my grandma into a rage. She ended up drowning my great-grandma, and then after she was dead, instead of calling the police, she cut up her body into 8 different pieces, put them in garbage cans, filled the cans with cement, and then put these garbage cans in different storage units all throughout my hometown where I grew up. When the police were investigating, she lied and said my great-grandma was in Hawaii with this wealthy man she met, and even faked letters from her. It's pretty crazy.
Story time. I babysat a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and there was this one night that I was babysitting a 2-year-old. It was around 10 o'clock at night, so the kid was sleeping, and I was just sitting in the living room. In the living room, there was a big TV, a couch, and then behind me, it was a wall with a giant window. So it was really late at night, I had nothing to do, so I was Snapchatting my friends. If you Snapchat anybody, I'm sure you know that sometimes you Snapchat really fast. You don't even know or look at what you're sending. I was mass snapping all my friends, and then one of them replied 10 minutes later. And he said, "Who's that guy behind you?" And I turned around and no one was there, so I'm like, he's playing a joke on me. But then I get another Snapchat from this friend I had, and she lives all the way across the country. They don't know each other. And she said, "I think there's someone outside." So I was really freaked out because I was alone. There was a giant window behind me. Apparently there was someone outside. I wasn't gonna call the child's parents because I didn't want to freak them out, but I was scared. So then I went around the house, locked all of the doors. Sorry, it's a really long story, like for part 2.
Story time about how I almost died when I was 4 years old. So my mom was at work and my dad and I were at home, and my dad was watching TV while I was trying to do headstands. I don't know, guys, I thought I was an acrobat at the time. So anyways, I had a penny in my mouth. I know, it's super dirty, don't come at me. I was 4, I didn't know. And my dad didn't know. And every time that I would do these headstands, I would roll over onto my back. Well, I rolled over and I started choking. And my dad looks over and I'm laying on the floor literally like freaking dying. He's freaking the hell out. So he calls 911 and I got rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. And the penny was sticking straight up at the time, so nobody was really worried about getting it out right then and there. And my throat was like holding that penny in place, so no, my dad couldn't do the Heimlich or whatever the heck it's called. Well, the penny flipped. And I stopped breathing and everybody was freaking out and they had to hurry up and get it out before I died. Part 2 about how my boyfriend found out that his best friend got me pregnant. So like I said, my boyfriend was black, his best friend was white, and because I doubted that it was his best friend's kid, I decided to wait it out. Say it with me, bad idea. So fast forward, I'm in the delivery room and I decide not to have my boyfriend in there. Well, let's just say good thing that he did. Bitch, whenever this thing popped out, it was white as fucking paper. So I was like to the doctor, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have a panic attack. Please get the baby out of the room. I don't want anybody around the baby right now. So when my boyfriend came back in the room, I was like, oh, we can't see the baby. He's having some issues. He's over here freaking out. I'm having a fucking panic attack about what I'm gonna do. And they brought my kid back and I was like, that's not my kid. And this girl looked so confused. She was like, oh, okay. And my boyfriend and I are laughing. We're like, oh, haha, that's funny. Then she comes back into the room and she's like, ma'am, this is your kid. So my boyfriend started screaming and he broke up with me after that. Like, how rude to just leave me with a kid by myself. No, I'm just joking. I know that was pretty fucked.
Story time. A girl named Akira Kendrick sent me this story, and the background of it is that her dad was very abusive to her mother, and her mother got custody of Akira, and her dad was not happy about that. Anyway, so Akira was with her aunt and her cousins at her grandmother's house, all on her mother's side, and her dad stops by to say hello. And Akira's outside playing with her cousin, and her dad comes up to her and grabs her arm and says, do you want to go to Walmart with me? And at the time, she's only 7, so all she hears is toy aisle, so she says, yes, let's go. So they get in the car, they head to Walmart, she gets some really nice pom-poms, and then he says, okay, let's go back to your grandmother's house. So he starts driving and he gets on the highway, and Akira knows that her grandmother's house is right around the corner from Walmart, so he does not need to get on the highway. So she says, Dad, where are we going? And he gets really mad and says, shut up, sit down, it does not matter. So Akira's in the back seat, she's really scared, and she just shuts her mouth. So after being in the car for a while, they eventually arrived at this really old, abandoned, beat up house. And when they walk in, Akira sees about 25 people and she does not know any of them. Her dad brings her to a room, puts her in a little closet, throws her some toys and her pom-poms and says, play. Part 2 is coming right now. Part 2 of Akira's dad literally kidnapping her. So when they get to the house, Akira is really scared. She doesn't know any of these 25 people. Her dad brings her to a room, throws her in a closet, puts some toys in there and says play. So after about an hour of being in a little closet with some toys, she finally decides to get up and go look for her dad. So she opens the door and starts looking around and there's no one in the house. There's not even a single trace of somebody ever being there. So of course she starts freaking out and crying. She doesn't know where she is. She's so far away from her grandmother's house and she doesn't have a phone. And so eventually after 3 hours, she hears somebody. She looks up and her dad is standing there and he says, come on, let's go, the cops are outside. So basically Akira's aunt called the cops and they had a search warrant for him. They ended up finding her dad and they said to him, if you don't take us to her, you will go to jail. And obviously from what I just said, he finally took them to her at this random old abandoned house and they found her. And they ended up putting him in jail anyways, because why not? 2 years in jail and 1 year on probation. Don't steal children, people. Don't steal them.
So I work at Bed Bath & Beyond, and first of all, the 3 B's in Bed Bath & Beyond should not stand for that. It should stand for bitches be bonkers, because these people come up in there and they act crazy. I was checking out this boomer woman and she was like, can you tell me how much this is? And I scanned her item and I was like, yeah, it's $19.99. And she looked at me and she went, like the Family Feud buzzer. She went, like it was such a good sound effect. I'm convinced that she was the Family Feud buzzer. Like they had her on salary and shit. She seriously went, nope, it's supposed to be $14.99. And by the sound of her I know that is not the first time that she has done that. I know that that is well rehearsed, that she uses whenever she thinks she...
I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister and her name's Ashley. And we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, you need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night. And I look at him and I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night. Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, no. He's like, no, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her. So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, we don't go into each other's rooms, do we? And we agreed that we do not. And they said this has been going on for months. So for months, somebody or something has been going into me and my sister's room for about 15 minutes every night and watching us sleep. But it only gets worse.
What's one really bad thing you did as a child that you kept secret for your entire life and didn't tell nobody? I'll go first. I got a lot of stories like this, but this is just one of them. So my mama used to put me in daycare, and in my daycare, we used to do field trips, and we went to the YMCA. So while we were in the pool, this one white kid comes up to me. He asked me, like, why are you black? And I was kind of embarrassed, but I wasn't mad at the kid. I was more embarrassed than I was mad. And I told him that my parents painted me every single day. And I was thinking back at the time when I scraped my knee and the skin came off and there was like no blood. It was just bone. But I didn't know that it was bone. I thought that I was just white underneath. So I was like, it's true, like I can peel my skin off and prove it. When I did that, I peeled skin off my finger and it was a lot of skin and I started bleeding really bad. So the water started getting red and the daycare people tried to get everybody out the water like there was something going on. And then once everybody was out of the water, one of the daycare people go, I'm so sorry, everybody. I lost my tampon. I need to find it. Okay, so what happened was pretty self-explanatory, but I can make a part 2 if you guys want.
This is why you should never take a prank too far. Once there were 2 young twins who lived in a small town and they were known for constantly misbehaving. One day a man had passed away peacefully in his home and the twins wanted to play a prank on everyone else living in the town, so they snuck into the house and started messing with the man's body. One twin moved his mouth like a puppet and the other one poked his eyes out with a stick. As they were doing this, they heard footsteps. They couldn't find anywhere to hide, so they placed the body back in the coffin, then got in the coffin themselves and closed the lid. But what they didn't know was they were taking the coffin straight to the funeral. The people carrying the coffin noted that it was much heavier than usual but brushed it off. No one even noticed that the twins were gone until the coffin was lowered. The twins' mother appeared at the cemetery about the missing twins, which stopped the funeral and began a search. Eventually, the man carrying the coffin confessed that the coffin had weighed more than it was supposed to, so they lifted it out and opened the lid. They did find the boys there, but they found them lying on top of the body, whose hands were wrapped tightly around each of their necks. The twins had been strangled to death.
Story time about how I got catfished by my best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My now ex-best friend and I hung out almost every single day. We were super close. Let's call her Natalie. Natalie and I would sometimes get into drama and her mom didn't like this. She considered me a bad influence on Natalie. But honestly, the drama was coming from both sides. Natalie and I had a group chat with one other person. One day, Natalie sends me a message through the group chat saying that she couldn't be my best friend anymore and that she's really sorry. She really didn't explain why though. I was crushed. She had been my best friend for so long. 3 weeks ago, I noticed that someone added me on Snapchat by search. I didn't really think too much about it. I added them back and we started having a conversation. She was a young girl my age and we started having conversations about boys we had crushes on, school, and lots of other things. I asked her to send me a picture of herself and she said she couldn't. That should have been the first red flag. Then we decided to meet up at the mall. I wait for her at the mall, but I'm at the mall waiting for this girl to show up, but she never does. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Like I said before, this girl told me she couldn't send me any pictures, so I didn't even know what she looked like. That's when I started suspecting something. We got along so well in our Snapchat conversations, it was almost too good to be true. So of course, I decide to call her. And guess who answers? Natalie, with her new friends who she knows that I hate. At that moment, I realized that she dumped me and then got with these new girls that she knew I hated. Of course, I was furious. I wanted to say something, but before I could, Natalie hung up the phone. And of course she did. She knew I was going to go off on her. Well, I start calling Natalie's phone several times, and she doesn't answer. Then I see that she unadded me off Snapchat and blocked me. So now I have no way of getting in contact with her. I spent weeks talking to this girl only to find out it was my ex-best friend catfishing me. So of course, I drive all the way to Natalie's house and her mom answers. Part 3 is
Story time on how me and my stepdad were doing the nasty and my mom walked in on us. Okay, so boom. I was 18 at the time and my stepdad was 40. My stepdad been with my mom for like 2 years and it's only the 3 of us in the house. My stepdad always treated me well and gave me lots of money. Every time my mom would tell me no, here comes my stepdad to the rescue, turning that to a yes. Me and my stepdad were alone together a lot and it would be very flirty between us. As the days went by, we got flirtier and flirtier and farther and farther. It started off as flirting, then we cuddled, and then cuddling turned into making out. I literally couldn't wait till my mom goes to work so I could spend time with him. My mom didn't suspect a thing. When my mom was home, I barely talked to my stepdad and I always stayed in my room. At this point, me and my stepdad didn't do the nasty yet, but this night I was gonna make sure it happened. Cause I seen my stepdad kiss my mom goodbye and I was pissed. Once she left, I turned it up, like for part 2.
Story time about the time a nail salon took advantage of my blindness. Sister and I got our nails done. We used to go all the time, and while the lady was doing my nails, she asked me how I knew how much money I had. At the time, I used cash, never again after this, but I told her that I folded my bills a certain way. I told her that I folded my 20s different than my 10s, different than my 5s, different than my 1s. Anything of her asking that question, I think it's a good question, and I just thought she was curious. Got done with my nails, she walked me towards the front, and my sister was actually just finishing up with hers, so it was perfect. Another man at the front, and he asked me how I knew how much money I had. I told him the same thing. Before I left to go to the nail salon, I made sure exactly how much money I had. My sister helped me count it, helped me make sure that I folded the right bills, just so I knew how much I had, how much I would spend. I gave her the money, positive that I gave her the right amount because it was just folded, it was folded perfectly, and I counted it out. She takes it, starts talking in a different language, and then tells me that I owe her $20 more. Or I didn't, and I told her the exact amount I gave her, and she's like, no, you didn't give me this amount, you gave me that amount, like for part 2.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom one time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, excuse me, I don't remember her name, can I please use the restroom? And she was like, no, you can't, because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester. Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated, and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, Mom, I'm sitting in class right now, my teacher won't let me use the restroom. And she was like, I'll take care of it for you. And I was like, okay. So like 5 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing, and she walks up to it and answers it, and she's like, hello? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then she walks up to me like so angry, and she like slams the pass on my desk, and she was like, since you have to go that bad. And I was like, yeah, I really do, thanks. And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls.
Part 2 of the worst customer ever. After she requested to speak to the manager, I went to get the shift lead and explain the situation. He immediately knew what customer I was referring to. My manager went to speak to her as I remade her drink a 4th time. She demanded that the drink be free and that we also let her pick a food item on the house for wasting her time. When we refused, she went ballistic and started screaming that she would never come here again and that we lost a customer. She demanded that we get the owner of the store down here immediately and said that she wouldn't leave until the owner arrives. We told her that she would have to leave or we would call the cops. She continued screaming at us, took the drink without paying, and knocked over one of the displays on her way out. My manager said that this customer complained almost every day, told me I'm doing a good job, and thanked me for finally getting rid of a Karen. I couldn't believe my eyes when she came back a few days later. I was dreading having to take her order again. To my surprise, my manager confronted her about not paying the other day and knocking over our display. He then asked her to leave, but she went crazy again and refused to leave, and this time we did have to call the cops. Ultimately, she left before the police came and hasn't been back since.
I am going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2.
Y'all, please! I will never hang out with a white boy again. This white boy came to pick me up because, you know, I was trying to get that little diddly dick. And as soon as we get into the car, he's smiling at first, and then he starts looking at me weird. I'm just like, okay, whatever. So we drive to his house. His mom is... I'm not gonna be able to get through this. His mom is there and she looks fucking terrified when she looks at me. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm probably the first bad bitch that he brought to this house. I'm sorry. So we go into his room. You know, we're just chilling, watching a movie, whatever. And then his mom pulls him out of the room. When he comes back, he asks me, do you need to go to the hospital? I'm like, no. Why the fuck would I need to go to the hospital? He looks at me. He's like, oh, me and my mom noticed that your scalp is peeling off. It was my fucking lace! My fucking lace friend! I'm like, what? And I run into the bathroom and I'm looking in the mirror. I look in the mirror and I see a whole part of my lace is lifted up. Once I told him it was my hair, he got mad and called me a catfish. He made me Uber myself.